We ready? Okay, we'll get started here. Welcome to the public hearing before the Planning Commission on August 23rd. We have three items that we'll hear tonight. Items 1 and 2, as you'll notice, are marked with a star, and therefore they require a public hearing and legislative action by the Municipal Council, so we'll just be forwarding a recommendation to the Municipal Council. The third item, which is not marked with a star, is administrative and requires approval only of the Planning Commission. We'll get started tonight with a prayer by Brian Smith, and Andrew Howard will lead us in a pledge.
Our Father in heaven, we're thankful for all the blessings which we have from Thee. We're thankful for this wonderful place to live in. We're thankful for those who serve, and we ask Thee to please guide and watch over them. Please guide and watch over our local government, our county, state, and federal governments. Lead them in the right way, and guide us this evening as we discuss matters pertinent to this city. We ask for these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Please stand and recite the pledge after me. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thanks. Before we proceed, we'll take a roll call, starting on my left with Brian Smith. State your name and if you have any conflicts of interest with any of the items that we'll be hearing tonight.
Brian Smith, no conflicts.
Shannon Ellsworth, no conflicts.
Jamin Rowan, no conflicts.
Dave Anderson, no conflicts.
Andrew Howard, no conflicts.
Okay, item number 1, Provo City Public Works Department requests an amendment to the Aspen Loop Road dedication to more accurately match the final plat, and that's in the Provost neighborhood. And applicant is Provo City Public Works. I don't know if, Austin, you have anything to say before, or are you the same as?
I'll introduce the item.
Okay, introduce the item then.
So to give you a little bit of background, this is the Aspen Summit development, which is being done by Mr. Steve Stewart. When he was originally coming through for his entitlements, this image, you can see this Aspen Loop that runs up along the boundary of the project. The roads are only constructed to here and to here. So what we're discussing is this section of unconstructed road. Now, when he originally came in for through the entitlement process, there's also an adjacent development to the east. So in this image, north is to your left. There's an adjacent potential development to the east that needed additional access. So in order to provide that access and not inhibit other entitlements from other individuals, that road was actually fully dedicated prior to Mr. Stewart's plans being fully complete and fully vetted. So this is that original road dedication plat that didn't involve any of the structures or phases or anything like that. As you can see right here, it provides right-of-way access into that neighboring property. Now that Mr. Stewart's development is progressing further and they're looking to best utilize the property, they identified that they need to shift that road a little bit. So although what's before you right now is a vacation, it also includes a rededication. So the road would remain in place. This next image, this red overlay that you see would be the new road dedication that would take place. But by state law, in order to vacate right-of-way, we have to go through this legislative action to do that. So that's the process that's before you, since it was Provo City that required that road to be dedicated fully before that applicant was ready with their development plans. That's why Provo City is now the applicant to basically vacate it and allow him to realign that road at this stage.
Thanks, Austin. Any questions for staff? Okay. Oh, Shannon.
There looks like there's what would you call that? Like an ingress egress on the north side. Is there a planned development for up there?
Yeah, so that's actually the east. The top of the page is
Oh, you're
to
right,
the
yeah.
east. North is to the left on that. But yes, there's Steve Turley has been working with the city for a number of years on a potential housing development up there. And one of the requirements of his development, because of the number of homes, is that he has to have 2 points of access. So one already exists coming from the north side into his property, and this was what was serving that east side. So that access would be maintained. But yeah, that was actually the original intent as to why the whole road was dedicated prior to Mr. Stewart actually being ready to determine exactly where that road would go.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Any more questions? Now we'll invite Public Works.
David Day with Public Works. I think Austin did a great job of explaining the issue and the reasons why the city's the applicant. So I'd just ask you if you have any other questions for me.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Day? Okay. Thanks. If there's any public comment on this item, we invite them to come forward, starting with neighborhood chairs. If not, any other members of the public are welcome to come forward and ask questions or comment. Okay, we'll return this item to the Planning Commission, and I'll look for a motion unless there's discussion on the item.
I move that we recommend approval of the proposed street vacation.
I second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. Okay, thanks. Moving on to item number 2, Provo City Public Works Department requests an ordinance amendment to add section 15.03.0203 to adapt public works standards by reference as required by state code, and this has a citywide impact. Josh Yost will be presenting this item to us. Take it away.
Thank you. As stated in the staff report, land use and development regulations must be adopted by ordinance. What this amendment accomplishes is simply adding language to our ordinance to adopt standards by reference, and it lists those standards that are to be adopted. On the second page of your staff report, I make mention of one item for discussion that staff identified. The Public Works Department, Community Development, in coordination with the Transportation and Mobility Advisory Committee, has worked through the process of drafting a draft complete streets policy. An element within that complete streets policy states that the city should adopt by ordinance by reference a number of guidelines or standards pertaining to transportation and mobility. There are some of those standards listed in that draft policy that are not contained in the proposed amendment. Those are listed A through E under your staff analysis and include guidelines surrounding pedestrian facilities, some additional FHWA highway design guidelines, as well as some Institute of Transportation Engineers guidelines for context-sensitive approaches to designing walkable urban thoroughfares, and then National Association of City and Transportation Officials design guides for urban streets and bicycle design. Speaking with Public Works staff, they at this point feel they're not ready or comfortable with referencing or adopting those by references. They're not haven't researched or become reached a level of familiarity with those standards to where they would feel comfortable adopting them, but have indicated their desire to reach a level of comfort with them and perhaps add those at a later date in the future, or not too long in the future, that they've discussed making some additional modifications to the ordinance, especially as that complete streets policy works forward. So staff would recommend, as listed in your staff report, that we adopt the amendment as proposed, and definitely encourage any discussion on these 5 standards that we listed that are in the complete streets policy but not in this amendment. The last thing is that the legal department just this morning provided back to Public Works their revised amendment language, or ordinance language, and it's shown on the screen. It differs from what's presented in your staff report attachment simply in that it changes the jargon at the beginning of the section. Instead of should adopt and referencing state code, it just states Provo City adopts and incorporates by reference. And then they added that caveat at the end to saying each as it may be subsequently amended or updated, providing the flexibility to maintain that reference independent of the updating of each of those referenced standard or policies. So staff's recommendation is that we move forward, as the Planning Commission, forward a positive recommendation or recommendation of approval to the Planning Commission on this amendment to the City Council.
Okay, thanks. Any questions for Mr. Yost? Staff. I do have one question just of clarification. So can you help me just sort out again what they did not feel comfortable with adopting as a reference right away?
Was it all of it, or was it just pieces of it?
Now, the A through E standards that I listed, those are the ones that are listed in the transportation or in the complete streets draft policy,
Right.
but weren't listed in the amendment. That may be a question better directed to David Day, as he communicated that sentiment to me. He may be able to communicate it to you more accurately.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? Okay. Invite David to come back up from Public Works and add anything that you feel.
Yeah, thank you,
With that.
David Day with Provo City Public Works. As part of the state legislature meeting this last year, they enacted a new bill that requires cities to adopt all requirements that they require of developers into city ordinance. And this was brought to our attention a couple months ago, and so we've been working towards getting those ready for you to review and hopefully adopt. So that's why we're bringing them to you. These are things that we've been using for years. The Provo City standards and drawings, the APWA standards and specs and drawings, the manual on uniform traffic control devices, that's what governs all of our signals, signs on the streets, how you put in a 4-way stop. AASHTO is a safety document on the geometric design of highways and streets. And so, and then the ITE trip generation is how we calculate how many trips would be arrived at on a site as far as, traffic numbers as we analyze a site. So all of these are things we've been using for years. Josh talked about something that we've been going through with the TMAC committee, and we are not familiar with some of those other documents yet. We're trying to get up to speed on those, but we wanted to come forward right now and get the ones that we are requiring of developers right now on, into city ordinance, so that we're on firm ground with the state law change. I have a box. It's pretty heavy I have all of those books in there. We have the ability to distribute the Provo City documents via PDF. The rest of them are, you have to buy a copy to get a copy. And so we have those available for you to look at if you'd like. But some of the costs of those documents make it so we can't really distribute it in a PDF format to you. So I don't know if you're interested in looking at those, I can get them out of the box.
These in the box are the ones that that are listed in this proposed amendment, or the do you also have the ones that
So here's
TMAC is recommending?
Here's the manual on uniform traffic control devices. It's got a lot of pages.
Really nice beach reading.
Here's the public, I get over here, Public Works Development Guidelines and our Public Works Standard Drawings. You can, hopefully if I can get to a page that has a picture, kind of see that's like all of our structures in the right of way that we use. It's kind of exciting for engineers, but boring for other people. Those are those two. These are ITE trip generation tables. And this is the AASHTO geometric design book. Some people call this the engineering Bible. This has got most everything in it. I don't know if you can see the colored tabs and almost well-used pages, but that's what that looks like.
Yeah. Mr. Smith?
I just have a question. I mean, I know I don't care to look through all those. I think that's for other people that know more about it than I do. I see my role here is to make sure that nothing crazy happens, and that we follow policy and guidelines. But I'm curious to know if there's a timetable to work on those recommendations from the TMAC.
Oh, yeah.
And what that timetable would be.
Yeah, I was going to get to that. I'm
Okay.
glad you reminded me. So part of this new law, anytime things change, we have to come back to you and then to the city council. And so every year we review our standard drawings, and we try to get those ready for the new calendar year. So hopefully sometime in November, we'd be back before you, having you adopt the new 2018 Provo City standards, and at that time, we would hope to be ready to go with those recommendations from the TMAC.
And this is to bring the city ordinance into conformity with state law?
Yes.
And that's the point of this?
Yeah, that's the whole point of this. And so anything that we're using and requiring of developers, we have to have the legislative body approve that.
Great. Ms. Ellsworth?
Yeah, do you know the state code reference that mandates this?
It was House Bill 232, and I don't know what number they landed it on. If you just Google House Bill 232, you'll probably get pretty
It
good.
impacts a lot of provisions in the Land Use Development Management Act.
Oh, it's the LUDMA,
Yeah.
that LUDMA change, okay.
So if you, it's easier to look at the bill to see what its
Right,
provisions
okay.
were than to go to the actual code.
Other questions from the Planning Commission for Mr. Day?
We're asking applicants to conform to this already. So we're, okay.
Yes, well, we require this on a daily basis currently, but because of the change in state law, we have to officially put it into.
Make it visible. I mean, the only thing that I would say is not so much a question is I really look forward to hearing back from you, and it sounds like just a few months, and by November on these standards. I don't know all of these. I'm familiar with NACTO Urban Street Design Guide and their ways of thinking. I think would be a really nice addition to. It sounds like what you have here is stuff that the city's been using for years. My impression is that some of the NACTO stuff might offer at least a slightly different perspective. It's a little bit more recent, and I think would allow us just a little bit more flexibility to do the kinds of things that we want to do in downtown and kind of denser areas. And so I really hope that, again, not knowing everything, A through E, I really hope that we hear from you in November a favorable report on these things, and
Yeah,
I think that'd be great.
That's our intent, is to try to do that. Believe it or not, Provo City is rather progressive when it comes to new and innovative ideas to handle streets and roads and traffic. Maybe not as much as people would like, but more so than other communities. So we're always looking to improve. For instance, we implemented roundabouts about 20 years ago. Bulb outs at intersections in subdivisions. We were doing those about 20 years ago also. So some of those things that you'll see in the NACTO, we have.
Right.
It's just that we haven't ever really referred to that book before and aren't familiar with what it says completely, because it's not on our desk every day. So we just need some time to
go through it
and get familiar and make sure there's no conflicts with other things that we do. So
or if there, again, I don't know what the discussion might look like with TMAC or with us in the future, but the conflicts in some ways are what I would be most interested in hearing about, maybe in a study session or something like that, where we can think about, okay, here's what we've always done. Here are things that seem to be some in conflict. How do we feel about that conflict? Do we kind of privilege the way we've always done it? Do we want to favor the more recent things and recommendations, or how we do that? It's great to hear that Provo's been doing roundabouts and bulb outs for many years, and that's really great. But as I look at projects like, and I don't know where we're at with like the Bulldog redesign, or it just seems like or 500 North. Some of that redesign, as we start doing some of those things, just having something again like the NACTA Urban Street Design Guide as at least a reference to give us additional ideas beyond some of the progressive things that we've already been doing seems really exciting to me. And again, I would look forward to November, but if before then, as you come across conflicts, again, as a planning commission, I think that'd be really fascinating to have a discussion about.
Good item to put on a planning commission study.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah,
Kind of
and
get
maybe
you up to
even
speed before you have to see me again. And
maybe even with the idea that it might take more than one, so a little bit of
Right.
lead time, so we can really
okay.
get our heads around
Maybe
everything.
September.
Thinking about, again, I don't know where you're at and getting up to speed with some of these, but we could imagine if we wanted to adopt a kind of updated amendment in November, if in October, that meeting, we're already at November, and so that might be, already at September, nearly, that might be too soon, but if by October we could have a study session where you come and say, okay, here's, as we've gone through some of these references, that standards that the TMAC and the community development have asked us to look over. Here's our initial response. Here are the conflicts. I think that'd be really great.
And that's That's our intent, so.
Yeah.
that
Probably comes
works
down to how
well.
quickly you can read, huh?
What's that?
Probably comes down to how fast you can read all the material
Yeah,
that's offered there
actually, they're smaller than
than this.
these.
Good.
And they have good pictures in them,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Other questions for Public Works? Okay. Thanks, Mr. Day. Okay, we'll open this up to public comment. If we have any questions or address from the public, any neighborhood chairs that wish to address this item, anyone from the public? All right, we'll return this to the Planning Commission, and I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move we adopt the proposed amendment.
Okay, is there a second?
I second the motion.
All right, all those in favor of the motion?
Just a quick clarification on the motion that we're recommending approval of the adjustment, correct?
And it
Yeah.
Yes, and it goes, yes.
So recommending approval rather than a proposed adoption.
Right.
Okay.
Approval of the proposed amendment. Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thanks. We look forward to having a longer discussion as the months, in future weeks and months. Thanks. Okay, item number 3, Duncan Aviation requests project plan approval for an aircraft hangar for refurbishing aircraft located at 262 South, 3800 West in the Public Facilities PF Zone. And that's in the Provo Bay neighborhood. Austin Corey will be presenting this item to us tonight.
Thank you. The image you see here highlighted in red is the property in question. This is west of I-15. You can see Center Street there and 3110 West, which is basically the farthest west north-south road that runs through the city. That's where the Lakeview Parkway ties into currently, the airport area. So this is directly adjacent to the airport. Duncan Aviation's been in negotiations and things with the city for a number of years now on this property, looking to develop their facility. And the project that's before you is for a concept plan approval for the entire site, and Duncan is pursuing what we're calling phase 1 of that project. The overall development from a concept level, as you can see here, now this skews it a little bit again, so I apologize, but north now is basically to your left. Center Street is the road just running through here that's just before it turns into Boat Harbor Drive to the state park. So they would utilize an access road that would come down into the site and include a large, what they're calling a service center, that would include some tie-down locations and some office space and et cetera. Parking to serve that facility, and not only the employees but customers that would come as well. A fueling yard that would be down here, and a paint hangar. And then there would be a ramp that could access the taxiways and things of the airport. So that's the concept level that's before you. As I mentioned, Duncan actually has full-fledged phase 1 plans in. This image shows you how that breakdown occurs. Now, this is a pretty heavily involved project. The city's participating in a large portion. Our Economic Development Department and our Public Works Department is doing some of the work as part of those negotiations. The area in yellow is portions of that concept that would be done by the city. Those would come at a later date as farther phase plans, so those would go through the CRC process. The area in red is the area that is being done by Duncan, that the full detailed plans have been through. The CRC has reviewed those plans to this level and found them largely compliant. There's a handful of things that they're just working through, but they're very minor. So those are pretty well done. And then the blue area includes basically just the ramp area around there that's being done by the airport itself. The two buildings being done by Duncan Aviation. This is the first, the large service center, and then this is the paint hangar area. Those have been reviewed by the airport board and approved through that process already at this point, but I wanted to make sure you got a look at them. So in essence, that's all that I have, but the proposal that's before you right now is for the concept plan approval so that everything else could be done through the CRC administrative approvals.
Thank you, Mr. Corey. Any questions for staff? Mr. Smith?
I just had a question about that. The remaining section on the south, it's really small to see in our staff report. If you know what that is and when that is.
The kind of grayed out area.
Yeah.
Yeah, I apologize. So that's a future expansion area for additional hangars or something like that, but that's not included in this particular project
It'll just
plan.
be hangars and other maintenance things like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other questions for staff? So, I don't know if this is a question for you or for applicant for Duncan Aviation. Can you help us just understand the larger picture here of kind of what's the economic, commercial advantage of what's happening here? And beyond just that, going bigger means more, expansion. I get all that stuff, but.
Yeah, we do have our economic development director here as well.
Yeah, I'd be really curious to just hear just a little bit about the why behind the project.
You bet. Dixon Holmes, Provo City Economic Development. So this is a project that Provo City's actually been working on since 2007. And actually it was everyone's hope that they would have been under construction and doing their thing since 2008 if had the economy not tanked. And following that was the jet aircraft industry, which was a bit challenging, especially when you had a president at the time talk about corporate jet aircraft and people flying back and forth. That just had ripple effects through this industry. But the big picture is this, is that Duncan Aviation will be bringing with this facility a capital investment of $80 million. They will be employing over 450 people. And these are not call center jobs. These are very technical, require a lot of training. And so they're family sustaining jobs. And this is part of our overall economic development strategic plan. It also contributes to and plays into the overall airport master plan in that this does help with the continued maintenance, upkeep, and number of flights, which then helps us maintain our tower and some of the other certifications that we need. It is a bit of a feather in our cap as far as Provo City and Utah County and the state of Utah. It's a very competitive process. When Duncan first started this process, as we became aware of it, there were probably 50 plus cities that they were looking at across the country. It came down to Provo City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Ogden, Utah. And Provo, working with the Governor's Office of Economic Development and others, were able to successfully compete and or provide a proposal and a commitment from Provo City to have this built out at the north end of the airport. Provo City acquired farmland adjacent to the airport. Provo City will continue to own this property. So when Provo City buys property and brings it inside the fence, Provo City has to own that property. Where the buildings will sit, Duncan Aviation will have a very long-term lease. This is taxable property, so Duncan Aviation will be paying taxes on the footprints of the part that they own and or the long-term leases. If you go back to the colored ramp or the colored, so again, they'll be leasing these red areas. They'll have long-term leases there. This blue area, Provo City was able to secure a ramp. That's just a very large piece of concrete that's 13 and a half inches thick and about 1,500 feet long and about 300 feet deep this way, and it wraps around the building. Provo City will also be contributing substantially to bringing in improvements. This was an area that was unimproved, so we'll be bringing in water, sewer, storm drain, power. There'll be gas, everything that goes with that. But again, very cooperative effort. The city was able to, again, acquire a grant from the Department of Commerce through the Economic Development Administration, where we pay half, they pay half for this ramp. This is a public ramp, so if a plane comes off the airport and they need to land and maybe not even going to be facilitated or are taken care of by Duncan, a plane could park there in short term. But this again helps overall the development of the airport, contributing to the number of flights in and out. And again, the bigger picture is that it brings jobs to Utah County, and specifically to Provo City. Now, there's no guarantee that the people working here will all live in Provo. That's just not going to happen. It's not the reality. It doesn't happen now with our existing businesses. There's just no guarantee of where they will live. But at least there's a hire or an opportunity. If this were in Ogden, for sure those people we wouldn't get that benefit. So again, better to have it here than there. Provo City does have an economic policy of encouraging and welcoming well thought out planned growth or development in our community in those places that are appropriate. And the airport is deemed one of those areas for future commercial growth. And that's kind of how it fits into the overall picture. Certainly what do we call it? The West Side Connector. We don't call it that.
Lakeview Parkway.
Lakeview Parkway certainly plays into this for getting in and off the freeway. The other thing that's a benefit is many of the corporate jet aircraft or private aircraft that are coming to this facility to be serviced, and there are some Duncan representatives here who can explain about what they do, is those people fly in, they spend money in our local businesses, they visit our restaurants and our shops and stay in the hotels. So it also has some secondary impacts on that, also bringing people to the area and making more of a gravity model for the airport in general, just development in that area.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Any other questions for economic development? Okay, thanks. Okay, invite the applicant, Duncan Aviation, to come forward and add anything that you wish to add, or again, if planning commissioners have any questions, we'll go ahead and pose those. Anything you'd like to add
Sure.
to what's already been said?
My name's Chad Doring, Duncan Aviation. Duncan Aviation is a family-owned business, been in business for over 60 years. As Dixon indicated, we do work on large corporate jets from all over the world. So jets from all over the world will be coming in to this facility for medium to large to heavy level maintenance. The nice thing about this facility is it supports the local vendors. We have a lot of local vendor presence that comes in and supports our activities in the service center. So not only does our employees benefit Provo City, but also the outreach we have in the community is with that. We do alterations, paint work to your corporate jet. So it's pretty much everything that you can imagine we can do in this one facility for the corporate operator or private individual too, depending who owns the airplane. Any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Smith.
You have some questions. It's probably a little bit off base from this actual thing, but with Duncan coming in, what kind of educational opportunities are there for the citizens around the area and in Provo to go out and get education in coming to work in this area?
Sure. There's so many different skill sets that we're employing, anywhere from an engineering skill set to a painter skill set. And so trade schools, UVU, Utah, or SLIC offer aviation maintenance programs, and we utilize those students. And to the collegiate level, where we are getting those engineering type students, designers, also leadership, where we're in our management levels and so forth. So we're pulling in from a vast amount of educational experience. And then we also do a lot of training, in-house training, and developing those folks and using the local school systems and the local community colleges to further their education.
Partnering and that kind of thing. That sounds amazing. Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Chad?
Timing on the project and just construction and how that might look as it proceeds. Are there different pieces that would come before or after others, and when do you anticipate maybe
Sure.
having everything done?
Yeah, happy to talk about that. So really, the first steps are potentially happening next month with aggregate piers going down for the paint hanger there towards the north. And, oh, there we go, for the paint hanger and here. And then foundational work will start in October for both these facilities, and then the steel construction. We're hoping to get both this paint hanger and this half right here. This is what we're calling our phase 1 of the construction process. We're hoping to get that done by really first quarter of 2019. And then we'll move on to the second hanger right here and get that done by third quarter of 2019. And then we got to go into the center section, and that's the last phase. And that's the more complicated with the office space, the shop spaces that are going on, our cabinet shop. And we hope to have that done by the end of 2019 to the first part of 2020. And that's when we'll be the full complement of employees will start happening in there. We're going to start phasing in employees in here in latter part of 2018 into these facilities. Maintenance staff, paint people, and support people. Support people being those office people, engineering, leadership, and material services, which is our parts people, our warehouse people, things like that.
Awesome.
Go for it.
This, just out of my curiosity, but would you predict working on maybe 10 planes a month when you're at full capacity, 20? I mean, what might the
That's a great
workload kind
question.
of look like?
That is a very good question, and it all depends on the size of the aircraft. So some of these aircraft, for instance, this is a good representation, are quite large. So we can take 4 of these and stick them in that hangar, and then put a couple in the middle. So it's kind of hard because of the different levels of maintenance, but normally we'll be running 8 to 10 airplanes through there a month, just on average. It all depends on the scope and work.
Awesome.
Currently in our Lincoln facility, which is much larger, and we're running 60 to 70 airplanes at any given time that are in
At once.
various stages of work. Right.
Wow.
Right. We do have a facility in Lincoln, Nebraska that's much like this one, and right now, currently, there's about 20 airplanes in work in each one of the hangars.
Goodness.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, there's this road, kind of looks like on it's the top, but technically what's that, the east side? Where does that go off to?
This road right here?
Yeah, when it comes down and then it hits the boundary line, keep coming down, 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 keep coming, no, other way. Further to the south. Yeah, where does that end up?
That's just a gravel road that gives access back to this location right in here.
It's kind of an easement for now.
An easement, yes.
Okay, gotcha. Thanks.
Okay, unless there are any questions for Duncan Aviation, thank you very much. Okay, we'll invite the neighborhood chair to come forward if neighborhood chair is here. Okay, any other neighborhood chairs that wish to speak to this item are welcome to come forward. All right, any public comment? Okay. If there's no public comment, we'll return this item to the Planning Commission. I'll look for a motion on this item unless there's further discussion.
So the recommended motion talks about final project plan, each project final plan. So this like in phases, is that why it reads that way? Is that the idea?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, what we're looking for from the Planning Commission is an approval of the entire concept. And then each, I guess the best way to describe it is this area in yellow isn't fully designed. The city's actually doing that design, but Duncan's ready to move forward with their buildings. So in essence, they can come in with, and they have come in with their final project plan. The CRC would review that, and once the CRC finds that it meets all the technical requirements of the ordinance, they have the ability of pursuing building permits and granting approval and all of that at that stage, but we need this planning commission level of detail done. And rather than bringing each individual project plan in front of you, we were looking basically for the overall concept, just with that condition that the CRC would be able to see each technical requirement as that progressed. Does that answer your question?
Perfectly. Yep. Thanks.
Mr. Smith?
I'll make a motion. I move that we approve the requested concept plan with the conditions as stated in the staff recommendation, with the final approval, review and approval of the CRC.
I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
It's unanimous. And that's all we have for tonight. I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I second.
Just real quickly, if the planning commission ever wanted to go out and tour the existing facility out at the airport, on behalf of Duncan, I would invite you to do that. If you'll just get with Bill, we can either do maybe an earlier meeting that maybe you're not, maybe like this evening with a lighter schedule. We can go out maybe at 4 o'clock, tour the facility, and just recognize it'd be 10 times larger than what you're looking at right now. So I'd love to show that to you.
Yeah.
You sit in the cockpit? Okay,
All right, thanks. Was there a second on the motion to adjourn?
right here.
Okay. All those in favor of adjourning? Aye. Okay.